Hello and welcome back to another Saint Nug Elden Ring video. And I'm back making this Elden Ring video for basically two reasons. One, I need views again. These videos bring in the most views. And then the other reason is to just kind of talk about the Elden Ring DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree, that's supposed to be coming out within the next decade or so. It basically, your boy Miyazaki dropped a concept art with a title for the DLC and no other information, which basically says, this is our idea, and we'll get it out to you when we feel like it. Which is very annoying, to be fair, but if we're being honest, is for the best, because I think Elden Ring could have been perfect if it had been given enough time, but unfortunately, they had deadlines, they couldn't work on the game forever, and so I'm happy that they're taking their time with the DLC. And boy, let me tell you, I am hyped for whenever this DLC decides to drop. I mean, if I'm being honest, when do I think it's going to drop? I think we might get a trailer at the end of the summer, maybe, if we're lucky. But I wouldn't expect this DLC to come out for at least another 9 months, if not a year. Yeah, at the bare minimum. But yeah, I'm so excited. First off, because it'll reinvigorate the multiplayer community. I've heard a lot of people complaining about this before. It's not a huge issue for me. I'm kind of indifferent, but with invasions really only being a thing when people are currently clearing a level with a cooperator, it makes the amount of people you can invade very, very low. Like probably 1 in 10, if not less than that, I'd imagine. I don't know. Don't fact check me on that. Actually, feel free to fact check me. Just don't get mad at me when I'm wrong on that. I did not look that number up. I guesstimated that. But what I'm saying is, when the DLC drops, you'll get all of these players that'll come back to the game to re-experience it and to experience this DLC again. And so not only will there be more players to invade, which would be super fun, but new places too. Anything new I appreciate in terms of invasion, because I've already played through the game's story like 3 or 4 times now. Yes, that's right, I have no life. But invasions is really all I have left to enjoy in the game, and I love the invasions so much. But yeah, it just takes a long time, and you end up just invading in front of boss gates. You end up invading in front of boss gates most of the time, which is just, it's unfortunate. Most of the times they'll just run through and you won't even fight them. Or you'll get the annoying invasions where you'll invade and then spawn in and they're already in the boss gate, and you'll either just have to sit there, wait for them to either die or beat the boss, or they'll just immediately kick you out. All 3 of those options are not amazing. The other thing that I'm super hyped for with the DLC, right, is the fact that the DLC from any FromSoft game is always the best part of that game. And I think the reason for that is just the fact that they're able to put so much time into it. They don't really have to worry about deadlines quite as much, which I think is just huge. And they don't have to worry about like things like, oh, how well can we market this? Because you don't really market a DLC, because it's only getting marketed to the people who already own the game anyway, right? So you don't have to do any flashy things for the marketing team. And the thing is, like, it's all just what the developers, what the game designers choose to do. That's it. You don't have to worry about any of that corporate side of game development, AAA game development. And so you really do get the best of the best. I mean, if I'm being honest, Dark Souls 2's DLC was better than all of Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 1's DLC is the only part of the late game in that game that was like perfect. The beginning of Dark Souls 1 was perfect, but the late game fell apart except for the DLC. The DLC for Dark Souls 3 was amazing. I can just keep on going on forever. This DLC is going to be amazing. I guarantee it. It's going to be at least 9 out of 10, if not perfect. But what I'm curious about is if this is going to be the only DLC that they do, which it's not unheard of. I'm trying to remember. So Dark Souls 1 had 1 DLC. Dark Souls 2 had 3 DLCs. Dark Souls 3 had 2 DLCs, and Bloodborne had 1 DLC too. So it seems like the average amount of DLCs a game gets is like 1.5-ish. So I would say there's a pretty good chance that we get a second one. It's not unheard of, but I wouldn't get my hopes up considering how long it's taking to release this DLC. But if they do make more DLC, that will massively increase the longevity of the game. Like I'm saying, it could be possibly like a mainstream thing that people are talking about for like, I don't know, like maybe 5, 6 years, maybe even a decade. Like even Dark Souls right now, people are still playing that and loving that. Imagine if this game got constant support, like content updates with DLCs and stuff, for like 4 or 5 years after it released. Like that would be absurd. Because I believe it's already been like a year, more than a year since the game came out, and we haven't even gotten one DLC yet. So let's say it takes like 2 years for one DLC, and you're only getting two DLCs. That's plus 4 years just to the content longevity, let alone just the player base's involvement. And of course, not only with just content like cool bosses and things like that, you're going to get new weapons, new armor, new spells, new, all the stuff, which again, it's going to be super fun for PvE, but what I'm most excited for is the PvP. Really, my only fear is that they're not going to implement the DLC into the main game very well, which is something I felt like some FromSoft games did a really good job of and others did not. Like, it should be something that just seamlessly fits in, and if nothing else, like even adds on to the base instead of just being like this separate branch that you can optionally go to, like most DLC is. Like, for example, a good version of really well implemented DLC is Dark Souls 3's DLC, right? Like the painting, right? It's just it perfectly fits in with what's already happening in the story and the location and stuff, to where it doesn't. I mean, if I'm being honest, if you didn't even know that you had the DLC, you would just think it's part of the base game, right? It's not even something like crazy thing. A bad example would be like Bloodborne's, where you have to like get this random item that spawns later on in a random spot, and then you've got to go to like some invisible creature and wait for it to like grab you and essentially kill you in order to go to the deal. Like it's too much. It's too much. So I hope that it implements itself very smoothly into the base game, and that it's not super forced or anything, and that the other thing, heaven forbid, they just make it somewhat balanced. Like obviously they've got to make the things that they add useful and good, otherwise it doesn't justify having a DLC, paying for a DLC. But please don't give us Dark Bead. For those of you that remember Dark Souls 1, the DLC had like these dark sorceries that were added on later, and they're OP. It was like a shotgun. Like everyone else is here with like tin swords and stuff, and you just go up and one shot with like their full armor, and yeah, it's obnoxious. So I hope there's some balancing that takes place too. Anyway, that's about all I had to talk about. There might be a minute or so left in this invasion, so feel free to enjoy that, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.